So, Bryan, we're thrilled to have you join our AI at Work series and would love to start with a mini introduction. Tell us, first of all, what you do and why are you qualified to share
Yeah.
your insights about your AI experience.
Cool. Okay, Stella, thank you so much. And everyone, thanks for joining today. I started going to Transform in 2021. I'm a huge fan of the conference and the community in particular. So it's great. I've been on stage at the live conference before, and I'm excited about this new program. I'm especially excited I kind of get to go first of the AI work sessions. So I don't have to sit and listen to the other speakers and be like, man, I wish I'd thought of that. But we'll see if I can set the tone. So I have about 30 years of experience. I started my career in recruiting, but I came to the Bay Area, California in 1999 as a dot-commer, and I've really been in tech in the industry in the area ever since. To kind of give you the shorthand, I was in staffing leadership roles at Google for about 8 years. I joined the year it went public when it was about 3,000 employees. And when I left, it was about 80,000 employees in the early 2010s. I joined Square, which is now called Block, as a startup of about 150 people. I led the people team there for 2 years and was recruited away before it went public to be the head of HR for Marissa Mayer when she was the CEO of Yahoo. So I was with her for the last 2 years before the company was acquired. The company's core assets was acquired by Verizon. I took some time off, and then in 2018, I was the first hire for Sarah Fryer, who was the incoming CEO of Nextdoor. She and I had worked together at Square, where I worked for 7 years. Sarah stepped aside in 2 years ago and became the CFO of OpenAI, and the founder of Nextdoor, Nirav Tolia, returned. So I did a founder return at Nextdoor in year 6 and 7 with the company. And I'm happy to say I just completed a very happy transition. I left Nextdoor about 2 weeks ago. So this is great to kind of stay engaged professionally. For those of you who notice like taking time off, but I'm very sensitive that a lot of you have a lot of other stuff to do today. So I'll try to make it worth your while. One of the unique aspects of my time in Nextdoor was really year 7. Number one, it's not common that you stay at a company for that long, but I was really lucky that I had a lot of tenure with the executive team, and my team, the people team, also had a lot of tenure. So my direct reports last year, the newest direct report had been with the company for 5 years. And so that was very rare, privilege of mine. But what it did is it gave me really the opportunity to let them run a lot of the traditional people team aspects of the company. They wanted to do more and take on more. And I'd say I was spending maybe 75% of my time on the deployment of AI internally. And again, I was just kind of lucky that the circumstances of the people team and us being together gave me the opportunity to do that. Because I know that if I was new to a company or I was in team building mode, I just wouldn't have as much time. The reason I decided to do that really goes back to Transform at the beginning of last year, where it felt like every other panel discussion was like, what are we going to do about AI? And I remember talking to my team at the conference and on the way back, and I was just panicked that we were really behind on, and I feel like that was a common sentiment for other CHROs at the company back in kind of February, March timeframe. And so we really came back with conviction. At the time, Nextdoor was doing a major product relaunch, like a 12-month effort. And so I talked to the executive team. We were concerned about too many priorities, but I felt urgent enough that we couldn't wait another 6 months until our new product was out to pay attention to AI. And what that meant was, anytime you raise your hand with a good idea, you usually end up as like the owner of it. So I was signed up to really lead the company transformation around really implementing AI. And so, kind of what I want to talk about today is a lot of the stuff that I learned in the last year and a year and a half. It's a really dynamic problem set. I really believe that this is the problem for CHROs to lead the company through. I can't get into that. And so my hope is, with this community and with the broader people leader community, that we can just help each other navigate what is a really difficult, ambiguous, important, and rapidly changing set of circumstances.
Well, obviously, you have plenty of experiences, and given the history, the track record that you have with all of these large tech companies. I hope whatever comes next will be just as incredible and well known to the world. The 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 conversations around AI indeed are all about how far and how fast it's moving. But is that really the reality? Just help us ground. What do you see from your perspective, and what are the real examples and benefits and cons based on the
Yeah.
experience you have?
Yeah, it's interesting as I've thought about AI deployment, I think we can all benefit from the same type of problem solving that we went together when COVID started and we had to figure out work from home. And what I mean by that is the structure is really similar in many ways, which is number one, no one knows what to frickin' do. Like it's a new problem for everybody. And that's important because in a lot of domains in human resources, you can kind of borrow from other companies' playbooks. You could hire someone from a company that did leadership development really well and copy what they did there and kind of make it your own inside of your company. And if you go back to 2020, like there wasn't any real way to do that. The people who were like good at remote working were companies of 60 people, or 100 people. And so we had to kind of figure out what to do. The other thing that I remember quite vividly in 2020 was the CEO population kind of declaring victory about what the future was. If you remember, everyone was like, going to the office is dead or work from home is dead. And they all just kind of thought that they were right. And you're seeing a very similar thing with AI today, where the CEOs are kind of proclaiming what the future is going to be. But the reality is like we're at best 2 years into this. That I really kind of say I believe like a good milestone marker is the launch of ChatGPT 3, which happened in March of 2023, 22, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. Anyone before that was like a real deep AI researcher with no real practical things to share with us. So we're all kind of like 1 to 2 years in. And I think really most people started to be like, okay, I guess I really do need to pay attention to this like a year ago. So that just means together we're all really figuring it out. But things to your point, things are being figured out very quickly, and that's why learning via community like this I think is really really important. And again, my own experience, like going back to work from home, I benefited so much from talking to other people leaders that were figuring out their own things. I would have been in so much trouble if I had to just totally do it alone. And so I think again, we should look to each other to try to get ideas and tools, and ultimately you're going to come up with the best solution for you. But to your point, I think where are we really, there's like this hype versus reality uh, dimension. And the hype is very real because the capability is so impressive. Like you see AI do stuff and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I've never seen anything like this before. It really is this technological breakthrough that is inspiring. Now, the challenge then becomes deployment. Like deployment is a much different thing. It's like seeing the product demo for, okay, what does this thing actually really do? And I think where we really feel the pain is on the deployment. You get this inspired CEO that's saying, I want everybody using AI immediately, and I want to automate half the company. And you go to try to figure out, and it just doesn't work totally as advertised. And this is true of all technical revolutions where the last mile of implementation is the hardest. And so everyone can see AI change the way you work, but what does it actually mean for the day to day of so many individuals? And I've really learned in this past 12 to 18 months that the deployment is a grind. Like you really need to put the people at your company that grind out the actual problems. And we all have people, hopefully, we all have like that one person on our team that you just trust to go get into the messy details and figure it out. That's the nature of this problem. And I think looking back, one of the things that really helped me is we kind of rounded up across the company the people that worked like that really found job satisfaction in untangling messy things. Those were the people that really started to make progress in the last few months in how to get this into be the day to day. And so the second thing, just to kind of extend the threads, Stella, is I was listening to the great Laszlo Bach, and I worked for him, so I now call him the great Laszlo Bach because I think he was so profound as an HR leader. And he was at a conference I was at a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about, all the gains that have happened in the workplace so far from AI are at the individual level. It's individual productivity, either through automation of tasks or for kind of levering yourself up through things like Claude or ChatGPT. That's where all the examples are. And there have been no real examples of company level productivity being improved, right? I guess you could say some automation, but what I mean is companies are groups of people working together at the team level, the functional level, organizational level, and that's actually how you create monetary value is through what the company does. This could be like a differentiated culture or process. And that AI has not really moved into impacting that yet. So the way groups of people kind of work together has not been accelerated by AI, and that's like the next big milestone. But understanding that construct of individual productivity versus company productivity, I think kind of help me understand why is deployment so hard. And it's because if you think of how companies work, people on the front line doing individual tasks is where the productivity gains have happened. But the problem is senior leaders are really far from how that front line actually works. So this is where you get that dynamic where the CEO's like everyone needs to be using AI, but they don't understand what everybody's doing. And again, I'm oversimplifying things, but I see people nodding your heads. You kind of get the point, right? The CEOs want to see progress, but they also don't want to spend time sitting next to someone and helping them figure it out. This means that you become really dependent on that middle layer of leader that we all ask to do frickin' everything. Manage the people day to day, innovate, solve problems, but escalate. Like they're just already so stretched with really hanging the whole company together. But this is really the group that's going to start to figure out that collaborative opportunity, but also how to make progress at the individual level.
It's so interesting because
Anyway, pause there. Go ahead, Stella.
the middle management, you see a lot of the news feeds about organizations taking advantage of AI and say, well, we can automate a lot of front line jobs and entry level jobs, but also we can eliminate some of the middle layers. When in fact, what you're saying it's actually the opposite of that. You really need to invest in them because they are the answer to your
Yeah,
deployment.
I'll take 2 points of that. Number one, I think so. Certainly, a lot of entry level jobs are at risk and have been impacted, and people want to directly attribute that to the advent of AI. It would be kind of obtuse to say that that's not true. But I really think it's not that it's automating jobs, it's automating tasks. And the challenge is that a lot of entry level jobs are just running the same task over and over and over again. And that I think will change over time as people kind of figure out what to do with entry level people in a different way. So my personal view is if you just started your career like this year, you're actually in a worse position than if you start your career 3 years from now because the young workers who come into the workplace in 3 years are going to be so fluent in building and managing AI agents. They're going to know how to do a lot of this manual work in an automated way that's going to be very desirable for companies, even to the point where, again, at this same conference, I heard the woman who runs AI for JP Morgan, again, 250,000 employees. Her take was that you're not going to be able to hire junior people unless you give them agents because they won't take a job managing the manual tasks that an agent can do. It's almost like saying you have to give me a computer, and I kind of never thought about it that way. I certainly think that that will be the case. It just means that the entry level rung is going to move up the ladder. It doesn't mean that people won't be capable of taking that lower rung in the future, but right now it's like it's a mess. Everything is being disrupted by how it's happening. But I think the past shows us that kind of moving the rung up doesn't necessarily cut off the junior people forever.
So when we talk about challenges in deployment, is it partially because of the lack of capabilities? Is it partially because we can't understand necessarily at the granular level the work activities that need to be done, or we just don't have the right type of skills to reimagine the new ways of working? Because it's not just about automation.
So I think it's a lot of all that. I mean, I personally am surprised looking back how much time I myself spent alone learning how to get better at using AI. And that then made me more informed in getting into the nuances of what the problems were. And so I really advocate that people kind of figure out how to do that. And I think one technique, an insight that really helped me, I guess there was a couple what I did was, and again, Nextdoor, like we've laid off half the company in the last 2 years. Like I'm not a company that was flush with resources. I haven't didn't hire a new person for 2 years, so it was extremely constrained, and that actually turned into an advantage for me because I started using AI to solve problems where I wasn't able to hire a person to do the work the way I would have done in the past. And specifically, if I go back to the beginning of the year, it was learning and development. Like I did not have an L&D team. I let it go 2 years ago, but I wanted to make training on how to use AI, and I didn't want to take it off the shelf from either OpenAI or LinkedIn, whatever. And so what surprised me is how capable I was using ChatGPT like a learning and development practitioner to develop a training. And through that, I really learned a lot about what it could do and could not do in a way that led me to actually start to think about myself more like an individual contributor, but not really, because I was managing an L&D person is actually what the work felt like. And so that led me to this really important insight that you see in a lot of places now is you have to start to reorient using AI tools like they are your teammate versus they are a tool. And so then what I found, because like you, like you probably have a very similar calendar. I was someone who was like, 11, 12, 13 meetings a day, and my calendar is just solid rainbow colors in Google Calendar. I don't have time to like mess around with AI, maybe like after dinner. But what I found was I was making so much progress, just like I would in a one-on-one with a direct report, that I started making one-on-one meetings on my calendar that were called with AI. And that's different for me. It was a different mental model than like work time, which everyone schedules over and is like the first thing I push when I have too much stuff to do. Because I had this one-on-one where I needed to work on this training program, and that was kind of doing both things. I was creating output for the people team, but also really learning how to do it. So I really push everyone that you've got to kind of reorient your own calendar to start to get more capable at this because you have to be more effective at the problem scoping at different levels of the org if you're going to be in charge of the implementation. And this is very different from the way executives tend to manage problems, which is through delegation and then having the right stuff elevated to you and focus on alignment. You have to kind of find a way to go a little deeper. And then at Nextdoor, we also, I worked with my CEO to make him force every exec to have an AI goal or agenda in the next 6 months. I just used top-down pressure to get everybody working on this, and that kind of manifested different successes in different ways. But him just kind of giving the directive was really, really powerful. And then today, where Nextdoor is today, and I think a lot of companies is really understanding what agents can do and can't do is an important problem to be working on right now. Because if and when AI jumps up to really impact that middle layer of collaboration at companies, it's going to involve agents. And so, at a minimum, you have to make progress on just having agents do some automated workflows. Otherwise, you won't be able to really participate when that next leap really happens.
So, Bryan, at the beginning, you mentioned that you pretty much own 75% of the deployment of AI. And as you progressed through the conversation, you just like you dove into it, you became a user, you firsthand took advantage of it. So do you think this is the early signs of the next gen role of HR to be that driver, the transformation engine for the rest of the organization?
So I think we are by far the best equipped to handle this because the nature of the way artificial intelligence does work looks more like how employees do work than the deployment of a software tool like Workday or Greenhouse or Oracle Financials. It doesn't act like a platform of software. It acts like workers doing work. And so we are so well suited in all of these problems, how to decide. And we were starting to apply this lens to agents. It's like, how are you going to tell if an agent is working or not? It's going to look something like a performance management process. How do you introduce new agents to the workforce? You can make it look like the new hire process. How do you get rid of agents? It's like employee offboarding. So our processes look more like this problem than anybody else's. And so I think we're really well suited against once we become informed on the capabilities to really lead this. And then I was lucky because at Nextdoor, our CIO and I had a great relationship and we just kind of worked together. But I also think it's essential that this is more tightly integrated with that group than any other. And I'll tell you why. The decisions in how people decide to spend a lot of money on software tends to live in the IT domain, right? It tends to be a completely separate conversation from should we hire somebody? What's the job description? Is there a head count? And everyone knows there's some like reindeer games on can you trade head count for dollars or dollars for head count, but they're generally speaking run as totally separate lanes of decisions. But now, especially as agents become more effective at getting work done, the question is, should an agent do it or should a person do it? And how to build the workflows. So for example, at Nextdoor, like we're not that big, so I think we're gonna pull it off. Is we're gonna run open enrollment with agents, like that's gonna be a totally agentic workflow that will be managed by the people ops team, but the employees are gonna interface with agents where last year they interfaced with the benefits manager. And we think this is a great test ground. And again, if it screws up, everyone is kind of a simple thing to solve. And like I said, it's only a couple hundred people. We could figure it out if it goes south. But now you're talking about like how we're delivering open enrollment is going to come through our software category, where it used to come through our personnel category. And so these things are now becoming like one lane. And again, I think that's better suited for the CHRO to manage the integrated aspects than to somehow think the IT team should be thinking about headcount. You know what I mean? And so those things are going to continue to really blend. And so as you think about, who's going to do this work, it's no longer just a can you hire or not hire type of question. You really should be able to figure out, no, this is something we can really build into our agent workforce.
So before we stop the recording, what is one, two top things that you would suggest any head of HR or any leader to take on to
So
help the organization? Yeah.
I think honestly, like I said at the beginning, I really think this is a problem where you need to be talking to as many peers as you can about this because everyone is worried about it. Everyone is working on it. And the nuances of how it's going to work or not work at your company are all very different. And so you just need as much input as possible from other people leaders. Like again, this is where it just reminds me so much of work from home because everyone internally kind of has an opinion, but you really need is someone who's in the same seat as you, who you can compare notes with, because they're going to contrast and compare. You're going to see the differences and why it makes sense to be different, but then you're going to find some of the patterns. So that's definitely number one by 10 miles. And then number two is like I think everybody read Atomic Habits in 2023. It's like top three bookseller on like how to change behavior through micro practice habits. That's actually a good framework for people to learn how to start to think to use AI. And again, what I remember, I was talking to a friend yesterday, like I said, I was a dot-commer. So I was a 23-year-old when the internet came out in the workplace. And I remember seeing people who now my age, 40s and 50s, just wouldn't think to use the internet because they had 20 years of experience before the internet and it wouldn't occur to them to use the internet because it was like this new thing. And we're all kind of in that boat now about like forgetting I should try AI, but like the kids are not going to forget. They're going to use it for freaking everything. And so that can be an advantage for your companies to like really learn from them. But using little things like atomic habits and micro habits to get yourself to start to retrain to think, how can I be using this even in little ways will help it become, more of a daily activity for you. And again, having gone through that journey personally several months ago, it's like I can't imagine working without it now. I really can't. But it took a lot of lost time and experimenting and just learn how to do it. Hey, it's tough to teach an old dog new tricks. I get it, but this was one I really, like learning to work from home was something I had to really adjust to learn how to do as well.
It's one of those technologies that make tricks really easy too. So, all right. Thank you, Brian. I'll
Of
stop
course.
the recording and then we can have a conversation.